I thought I was leaning on family after my husband died 1 year ago. But when my daughter-in-law threw my family jewelry into the trash and growled, "I don't want your taste here," I saw the truth. They saw a confused old woman. They didn't know they just activated a cold, meticulous, and perfectly legal plan. They thought they were the hunters. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I am 63 years old, and for the past year, I have been learning the shape of the world as a widow. David, my husband of 40 years, was gone too quickly. A heart attack that stole him one rainy Tuesday. We lived in a quiet suburb just outside Portland, Oregon, in a lovely old craftsman house full of warm wood, overflowing bookshelves, and the comfortable clutter of a life well lived. For 35 years, I was a high school history teacher. My life has always been simple, finding joy in the patina of antiques and the weight of history in my hands, especially in the jewelry passed down through my family. David understood that. He left me well provided for, always the planner. The house, which was paid off decades ago, was solely in my name. He also left a significant life insurance policy, enough to ensure I would never have to worry, and, of course, the family jewelry collection. It was all mine, a final act of his steady, quiet care, and the foundation for a conflict I never saw coming. My only son, Jason, is 35. He works as a sales manager at a financial firm called Blue Harbor Capital, handsome and ambitious, always chasing the next big thing. He is married to Madison. Madison is an experience. She is a social media influencer, one of those people who built a career on having a specific brand. Her brand was minimalist white. Their home, in a sprawling new development, was her showroom, a stark gallery of white walls, white furniture, polished concrete floors, and not a single item out of place. It was spotless, cold, and entirely devoid of personal history. About a month ago, I had a dizzy spell. It was nothing serious, just a moment of lightheadedness while gardening, but it was enough to scare me. My doctor, seeing the grief I was still processing, suggested it might be good to be near family for a while. That was all Jason needed to hear. He immediately insisted I sell the old house. "It's just too much for you, Mum," he argued, his voice dripping with manufactured concern. "All those stairs, that big yard? Just sell it. Move in with us for a while. We can take care of you. It's temporary. Just until you're back on your feet." I was tired. The silence of the big house was heavy, and the thought of being near my grandchildren was a comfort. Reluctantly, I agreed. I sold the house where I'd raised my son, the house David and I had built our lives in, and moved into theirs. I arrived with only a few boxes of keepsakes and my old, carved wooden jewelry box. That box held more than gold and stones. It held the engagement ring of David's grandmother, my own mother's pearls, and the sapphire brooch my father gave her on their 20th anniversary. 3 generations of Hayes women were locked inside that polished wood. Madison greeted me at the door with a smile that was all teeth and stretched too wide. Her eyes, however, weren't smiling. They darted from my sensible suitcase to the cardboard boxes, cataloguing every item that threatened her sterile environment. "Eleanor, welcome," she said, her voice bright and brittle. "We are so happy to have you." But her gaze lingered on the boxes, a look of profound irritation flashing across her face before she masked it. The room she gave me wasn't really a bedroom. It was a guest room. perhaps once an office, furnished with a severe, low-profile bed and a single white dresser. It felt like a hotel room, not a home. "We'll get you settled," she promised, though she immediately vetoed my attempt to hang a small landscape painting David had bought me. "The walls need to stay clean. Eleanor, it's crucial for the aesthetic. Just keep your boxes tidy. Please don't clutter up the space." My grandchildren, 8-year-old Lily and 6-year-old Ben, were sweet. They ran to hug me, and I cherished their uncomplicated warmth in that cold house. They were lovely children, and I never saw Madison mistreat them. But they quickly became tools for her control. "The children need a clean, uncluttered environment, Eleanor," she'd say later that day, eyeing the box of my old teaching books. "All this old stuff, it's just not healthy for their space." That first night, the silence in this new house was different. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of my old home. It was a sterile, pressurized quiet. Jason and Madison had retreated to their wing of the house after dinner. I sat alone on the edge of the uncomfortable bed in my temporary room. The single lamp cast a weak, bluish light. I pulled the heavy wooden box onto my lap and lifted the lid. Under the glow of the lamp, I ran my fingers over the familiar shapes, the heavy gold locket, the delicate diamond studs, the sharp edge of the Art Deco brooch. I was holding my entire history, my legacy, in a house that clearly had no room for it. I felt like I was bringing my whole family history into a place that didn't belong to me. I woke up on Saturday morning to a sense of violation. The sun was streaming into my guest room, but the air felt wrong. My small, framed photo of David on the nightstand was gone. The antique lace runner my grandmother had made, which I had placed on the dresser, had vanished. My stack of worn paperback novels by the bed, gone. I hurried out, my heart quickening, and found Madison in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, a perfect white mug of coffee beside her. "Oh, good morning, Eleanor?" she chirped, not looking up. "I tidied up your room last night while you were asleep. It was getting so cluttered." My eyes scanned the vast white kitchen counter, and then I saw it. My carved wooden box. It was pushed into a corner, the lid thrown open. The velvet trays were overturned, empty. A single pearl earring lay gleaming like a lost tooth on the cold stone. I looked past her, through the sliding glass door to the patio. A large black trash bag sat by the curb, tied shut, waiting for Monday's pickup. A cold dread, sharper than grief, shot through me. I did not say a word. I ran outside, the chilly morning air hitting my face. I fumbled with the plastic knot, my fingers shaking, before ripping the bag open. The smell of sour milk and old coffee grounds hit me. And there, buried beneath a greasy pizza box and a handful of wet paper towels, was my history, my mother's pearls, tangled in a sticky mass of what looked like discarded salad. David's grandmother's ring, its diamond caked in grime, the sapphire brooch, bent, one of the smaller stones missing from its setting. "What are you doing?" Madison's voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet morning. She had followed me out. She was not embarrassed. She was angry. She snatched the torn bag from my hands, her perfectly manicured fingers digging into the plastic, and threw it hard onto the driveway pavement. "I told you," she growled, her voice dropping to a low, vicious tone I had never heard. "I don't want your taste here. This house is my brand. Eleanor, it is not your family museum." I just stared at her, frozen. The shock was so profound it felt like a physical blow. This was not a mistake. This was not a misunderstanding about minimalism. She knew what these were. She had held heirlooms worth thousands of dollars in her hands and dumped them in with the garbage. This was a power play, a declaration of war. The patio door slid open again, and Jason emerged, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "What's going on?" "It's 8 in the morning." He saw the trash, my horrified face, and Madison's rigid anger. "Mum, what are you doing with the garbage?" She threw them away." I stammered, pointing. "All of them." Jason sighed, an annoyed, weary sound. "Mum, please don't make a big scene. It's just some old stuff. You know this is Madison's space for her content. You need to respect that." I looked at my son, this man I had raised, and saw a stranger standing there, placating his wife, defending this desecration. His loyalty was not to me, it was to her brand. "I want them back," I said, my voice shaking but finding a new edge. "I am taking them, and I am putting them in a safe deposit box at the bank." Madison let out a cold laugh. "Fine. But if you keep this stuff out, if my followers see it, brands will think we're tacky. Is that what you want? Do you want to hurt your son's career? Our partnerships?" The insult had seamlessly morphed into a sophisticated threat. As I knelt on the cold pavement, digging through the filth, a new horror surfaced. The Art Deco brooch was there, bent. The pearls were there, sticky. But the diamond studs David had given me for our 30th anniversary, my grandmother's wedding band, they were not in the bag. I frantically sifted through the coffee grounds and rotting food. They were gone. "Where are they?" I demanded, looking up at her. "The diamond studs, the gold band. They are not here." Madison just shrugged, her expression bored. "I have no idea what you are talking about. You probably misremembered. Old people get confused." I said nothing else. I gathered what I could salvage, cradling the soiled, damaged pieces in my hands. I carried them inside, past my son, who was already back to looking at his phone, past Madison, who was wiping her hands on a disinfectant cloth. I walked to the kitchen sink. I turned on the warm water and, one by one, I began to wash the filth from my family's legacy. My hands were shaking, not from fear or sadness anymore, but from a cold, quiet rage. I washed away the coffee grounds from the pearls. I straightened the pin on the sapphire brooch, and as I watched the grime circle the drain, I felt something in me harden, clicking into place like the lock on a vault. After the jewelry incident, Madison's tactics shifted. The open hostility was replaced by a suffocating, performative concern. "Eleanor, did you take your blood pressure pill?" she would ask brightly, 10 minutes after I had already taken it in front of her. "Are you sure you locked the door? You know how forgetful you've been lately." I heard her on the phone with a neighbor, her voice dripping with pity. "We're just so worried. She's been having some memory issues since David passed." A few days later, Jason sat me down, adopting his most sincere, professional tone. "Mum, we need to talk about simplifying your finances. You have the house proceeds, the insurance, it's a lot to manage. Madison and I were thinking, the best thing to do is set up a Hayes Family Living Trust. We can put the assets in there, and Madison and I can manage it for you. It just takes the burden off your shoulders." It was presented as a kindness, an act of filial duty, but the words co-manage and your assets hung in the air, cold and heavy. I was slowly, methodically, being painted as incompetent. I started to notice Madison's phone was always pointed at me. When I misplaced my reading glasses, she filmed me searching. When I let the toast burn one morning because I was distracted by the kids, she recorded the smoke alarm, panning over to my confused face. "It's just for the family, Mum," she'd say breezily when I questioned her. "Just funny little grandma moments." I knew, instinctively, that this content was not private. The proof of their motive came late one night. I was heading to the kitchen for water when I heard low, angry voices from their study. "You have to push her. Jason." It was Madison. "We are drowning. Those lenders are not messing around. You have to get her to sign the papers." "Don't you think I'm trying?" Jason's voice was stressed, thin. "This has to be legal. Maddie, I am not going to jail for you. Not like that mess back in Texas." My blood ran cold. Texas jail. I backed away, silently. The next day, Jason left his laptop open on the kitchen island, a rare slip. I glanced down. An email was open from a major credit card company. The balance, a staggering $47,000, marked "Final Notice." A message thread was visible from an entity named Apex Bridge Loans. The tone menacing, referencing collateral and a balloon payment that was now overdue by 30 days. The numbers were far beyond what a sales manager's salary could support. I had to get out. That evening, I approached Jason. "Jason, I've been thinking. I'm feeling much better. I'd like to use the insurance money to find a small apartment of my own, maybe in my old neighborhood." Jason's helpful demeanor vanished. "Absolutely not. Mom," he said sharply. "You are not lucid enough to live alone right now. You're forgetting things. You burnt the toast. You're confused. If you fight me on this, I will have to convince a court that you're a danger to yourself. It's for your own good." The final move came 2 days later. Madison announced she had made me a doctor's appointment. Just a checkup. Eleanor, a specialist, Dr. Nolan. He's the best with memory care. The appointment was a farce. Dr. Nolan, a man with a practiced, sympathetic smile, asked me a series of leading questions. "Do you often forget what you ate for breakfast, Mrs. Hayes? Do you find yourself misplacing items frequently? Madison tells me you had an episode with some burnt toast." He seemed to be checking boxes. He was called out of the room to take a phone call. I was alone for a moment. My eyes fell on the folder on his desk. My name was on the tab, Hayes. Eleanor. It was slightly open. I saw the top page. It was a partially completed diagnostic report. At the bottom, under Assessment, a phrase was already typed: "Suspected mild cognitive decline, requires monitoring and household support." Below that, Dr. Nolan's signature was already affixed in blue ink. Only the date was missing. I excused myself to the restroom. I stood in the small, sterile room, gripping the edges of the porcelain sink. I looked at my own reflection. I saw the face they wanted to see, a tired, grieving, confused old woman. A woman easily pushed aside. A woman whose assets could be neatly absorbed. I saw the woman they were building a case against. If I continued to be this quiet, broken victim, they would win. They would strip me of my name, my money, and my sanity, all under the guise of care. At that moment, the grief for my son was eclipsed by a cold, clear realization. This was no longer about family. It was about survival. That night, after the humiliation at Dr. Nolan's office, my landline rang. It was late, past 10 o'clock, and Jason and Madison were in their wing of the house. I picked up the receiver in the kitchen. Eleanor Hayes, a woman's voice asked. It was crisp, professional, and unfamiliar. This is she. My name is Veronica Mills. I am the Senior Vice President of Human Resources at Blue Harbor Capital. My stomach instantly tightened. Is this about Jason? Is he all right? He is, she said, cutting me off. This call is about you. I must meet with you tomorrow. Mrs. Hayes. Alone. You cannot, under any circumstances, tell your son or his wife about this conversation. Her tone was dead serious. If you do, I guarantee you will lose everything before you even understand what is happening. Meet me at 11 o'clock. The Pearl Cafe, downtown. I'll find you. Before I could answer, she hung up. The next morning, I told Madison I was going to the library, an outing so boring she barely looked up. The Pearl Cafe was noisy, filled with the lunchtime rush. I had just found a small table in the back when a woman with short, steel-grey hair and sharp, intelligent eyes approached me. She wore an expensive, severe suit. Eleanor? I'm Veronica. She did not waste time on pleasantries. She slid a thick manila folder across the table. I apologize for the cloak and dagger, but I think you'll see the necessity. I opened it. The first page made my blood run cold. It was a draft of a legal document, a petition for full involuntary guardianship. It listed Jason Hayes and Madison Hayes as the petitioners, and me as the incapacitated person. Stapled neatly to the back was a multi-page report from Dr. Nolan, signed and dated for a week in the future. It detailed my progressive cognitive decline, citing my confusion, agitation, and inability to manage daily affairs or complex finances. It was all there, a narrative of my supposed descent into senility. This, Veronica said quietly, is what they plan to file next week. She then slid a second, heavier folder toward me. And this is why. It was a stack of printouts, loan applications to high-risk lenders, internal memos from Blue Harbor Capital, spreadsheets. Jason is massively in debt, she explained, her voice low. He is attempting to secure what's called a bridge loan by illegally leveraging your assets. He's used his position at the company to access internal data and falsify your financial profile to make you look like a high-value, liquid client. When the guardianship is approved, he and Madison will have full control to post your assets as collateral, take the loan, and well, the lenders he's dealing with don't care where the money comes from. She pointed to a line of code on one of the printouts. If this gets out, it's not just a scandal for Blue Harbor, it's felony fraud, and he will go to prison. I stared at her, my mind reeling. Why? Why are you showing me this? To protect the company. Veronica's expression softened, just slightly, revealing a deep, old anger. The company is one reason, but mostly, it's personal. 10 years ago, my younger sister was convinced by her loving nephew to sign over her power of attorney. He and his wife bled her dry, sold her home, and put her in a state-run facility. I see the pattern. Mrs. Hayes. And I will not stand by and watch it happen again. She had been building her own file. Jason is arrogant. He leaves sensitive documents on the company printer. He brags to colleagues. She pulled a small digital recorder from her purse and pressed play. I heard Jason's voice, loud and slurry from what sounded like a bar. Another year. Tops. He was laughing. And the old lady won't own a single thing. It'll all be safe in the trust. I finally understood. The incident with the jewelry. It wasn't an impulsive act of cruelty. It was a test. They threw my entire family history into the garbage to see how I would react. When I just cried, salvaged the pieces, and said nothing further. I had given them my answer. I had proven I was the passive, grieving, confused old woman they needed me to be. I have the documents, Veronica said, leaning forward. I have the recordings. I have a lawyer who specializes in elder financial abuse and has dealt with Dr. Nolan's questionable diagnoses before. And I have a very good friend at the state's Financial Crimes Division who is extremely interested in Jason's activities. I have the weapons, Eleanor. But you are the victim, and you are the legal owner of the assets. We must work together. I looked at this woman, this complete stranger who had just thrown me a lifeline. The pain of my son's betrayal was a physical ache in my chest, but it was being rapidly overtaken by a cold, hard resolve. I did not cry. I did not hesitate. I reached my hand across the table. Tell me about the lawyer, I said. We shook hands. It was not a gesture of comfort. It was a contract, sealed over untouched coffee in the corner of a noisy cafe. It was the quiet, precise, and entirely legal beginning of their end. The lawyer Veronica introduced, Douglas, was all sharp angles and cold logic. I met him in a discreet coffee shop downtown. His instructions were simple and chilling. Do not confront them, Eleanor. Do not argue. Do not show them this new anger. From this moment, you are precisely who they think you are. You are tired, you are confused, and you are starting to lose your grip. I returned to that sterile white house and began my performance. I became the woman they were inventing. I left the milk on the counter for 3 hours. I sat in the living room and asked Madison what day it was. Twice. When I wrote a note to a friend, I deliberately transposed the numbers in the phone number and left it on the kitchen counter, knowing her eyes would scan it. My fragility became my armor. My first priority was to establish a secure link to the outside world, on the pretense of a confused, meandering walk. I went to a small corner store several blocks away and purchased a prepaid phone and a top-up card with cash. Back in my room, I took out the carved wooden jewelry box. It had a false bottom, a small hidden compartment David and I had used to hide silly anniversary notes from a young Jason. It was the one place I knew Madison would never look. That burner phone, hidden beneath the velvet lining, became my lifeline to Douglas and Veronica. The following week, my real work began. Using the new phone, I spent hours in quiet, tense calls with Douglas and my longtime financial advisor. Following their precise instructions, I began to move my assets. The bulk of the life insurance payout and the proceeds from the sale of my home were quietly transferred. I liquidated the funds, moving hundreds of thousands of dollars into a newly created, irrevocable trust, the Hayes Education Trust. Douglas structured it perfectly. The beneficiaries were my 2 grandchildren, Lily and Ben, and a new scholarship fund at the high school where I had taught. It was ironclad. Even if Jason succeeded in getting guardianship, he would never touch a single cent. Next, I needed proof of the environment they had created. I ordered 2 tiny, Wi-Fi-enabled cameras online, the kind that looked like small air freshener plugins, and had them shipped to a local pickup locker. I installed one on the bookshelf in my room, its lens peeking out between 2 history books. I placed the second in the living room, angled perfectly to capture the main sofa and the kitchen entrance. They began to capture the truth. They recorded Madison's sneer when she thought we were alone. God, Eleanor, can you just sit down? You wandering around makes the whole house feel cluttered. They recorded the subtle gaslighting, her moving my reading glasses from the nightstand to the kitchen, and then watching me search for them with feigned sympathy. I had to bait the trap further. I knew Madison hadn't just thrown away those missing jewelry pieces. I bought a small, cheap notebook. In it, I carefully wrote the names and addresses of 3 well-known pawn shops and 2 high-end jewelry consignment stores in downtown Portland. I left the notebook tucked into my purse, but with the corner sticking out, an obvious discovery for anyone tidying up. I was giving her a map, daring her to create the very paper trail of theft that Douglas needed. I then played my most difficult hand. As Douglas had coached me, I approached Jason one evening, letting my shoulders slump, my voice quiver. "Jason," I whispered, I can't keep track anymore. The bank statements, the insurance paperwork. My head is just so fuzzy. I think you might be right. Maybe you should help me manage some of the accounts. It's just too much for me. The look of triumph that flashed in his eyes was sickening. He thought I was finally caving, finally broken. The public humiliation continued, but now I saw it as evidence. Madison staged a spring decluttering live stream. I was the centerpiece. "My sweet mother-in-law is such a pack rat," she chirped to her thousands of followers, holding up one of David's old, worn sweaters. "We have to teach her that letting go is a part of healing." The comments poured in, praising her patience. My little camera, however, recorded what happened the moment she hit end stream. She ripped the sweater from my hands. "Stop being so dramatic. Eleanor, it's just junk." Meanwhile, Veronica was working. She called me weekly on the burner phone. The state's financial crimes inspector was building the case against Jason for using internal company data. "They're close," Veronica said, her voice taut. "But they need him to make the final move. They need him to actually file for that fraudulent loan using your falsified profile. Your cooperation is making him bold. Eleanor, keep it up." I did. I played the part of the fading widow perfectly. So perfectly that late one night, I lay in bed and heard Madison's voice drifting from the patio. She was on the phone, her voice low and confident. "It's almost done. The guardianship papers are ready. Dr. Nolan's report is solid gold. Just a few more months, maybe less. Once that's filed, the old house money, the insurance, it's all ours. We can finally clear that Texas debt for good." I closed my eyes. I did not feel fear. I felt the cold, hard click of a mechanism locking into place. The final act was beginning. My manufactured cooperation only made Jason more aggressive. He announced over dinner, "Mum, I've scheduled an appointment with our family lawyer for next Tuesday. Just a consultation about the estate. It's time we got things organized." He insisted I accompany him. I sat in the plush, intimidating office, while a lawyer spoke of probate and durable power of attorney. On the drive home, Jason used his most reasonable tone. "You see how complex it is? Mum, honestly, I do not think you should be driving anymore. It is just not safe. And maybe I should hold on to your credit cards for safekeeping, just so nothing gets lost." Madison immediately enforced the new regime. The next morning, when I went to make pancakes for the children, She physically blocked my path to the stove. No, Eleanor. I cannot risk you leaving the gas on. It is not safe for Lily and Ben. My world, already small, shrank to the size of my room. I was forbidden from cooking. I was strongly advised against going for walks alone. Madison insisted she or Jason accompany me to the grocery store. Just in case you get turned around. They were systematically building the image of a woman who could not be trusted with her own autonomy. The pressure intensified. Jason left a thick, bound folder on the white kitchen island. He did not even bother with pretenses this time. Mum, these are just bank papers, authorization forms. You need to sign them so we can consolidate things. He tapped the cover. It is much better if you sign these now, willingly, before you get well. More confused. We really do not want to have to prove all this to a judge later. Do we? The threat was no longer veiled. It was a blunt instrument. I played my part. I picked up the stack, letting my hand tremble slightly. I flipped through the pages, feigning utter bewilderment. Oh, Jason, this is all so much. What does springing power of attorney mean? I asked, my voice thin. And this bank, Apex Bridge Loans, I do not recognize that name. I asked dozens of seemingly inane questions, my supposed confusion frustrating him. But behind the mask of the doddering old woman, my mind was sharp. I was memorizing. I was noting the name of every bank, every unfavorable clause, every account number listed. Later that night, locked in my room with the burner phone, I relayed every single detail to Douglas. Madison's patience was clearly wearing thin. My hesitation was delaying their access to the money. She staged her next attack when they had two other couples over for dinner. As I was quietly clearing plates, she stopped me, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Eleanor, if you are not going to sign the papers Jason prepared, we will have no choice. We will have to talk to Dr. Nolan and the court. I cannot have the children living in a home with someone who is unstable. The living room fell silent. Her friends stared at their wine glasses. I just looked down, feigning humiliation. But I knew, with a cold certainty, that my tiny camera in the corner had captured every syllable of her calculated threat. I knew they were escalating. Veronica confirmed it. Jason booked another emergency consultation with Dr. Nolan for tomorrow. She informed me on the secure line. He's forwarding Nolan what he calls a behavioral log. My access to his company outbox shows he sent several video files. Veronica also had an update from her contact. The financial inspector is ready. He found the account. Jason opened a temporary holding account under a shell company, JH Capital Solutions. It is empty, waiting for the wire transfer from the Apex loan. That is the final piece of the fraud charge. They just needed one last push. I decided it was time to give it to them. The next morning, I accidentally got on the wrong bus. I was meant to be going to the library, an approved 2-mile trip. Instead, I boarded the number 14 bus, which went all the way across the river into downtown. 2 hours later, I used my real phone to call Jason, my voice pitched in perfect, manufactured panic. Jason, I do not know where I am. I think I am lost. I got on the wrong bus, and now I do not recognize anything. The fury in his voice was palpable, even over the phone. He had to leave a major client meeting to come and find me sitting on a park bench. When I got in his car, he did not yell. He spoke with a terrifying, cold calm. This is it. Mum, this ends today. If you were normal, I would have had you put in a long-term care facility months ago. That night, I heard them in their study, their voices low but energized. They were making the final calls. They were filing the petition. I retreated to my room, took the burner phone from its hiding place, and dialed Veronica. "They are doing it," I whispered. "He is furious. They are filing." I took a steadying breath. "Is it time?" Veronica's voice was like ice. "Yes, it is time. We are going to let them have their day in court. We are going to give them exactly what they want right on the very day they think they have won." The bus incident was the final piece of evidence they needed. 2 days later, Jason and Madison sat me down on the white sofa. They looked somber, a well-rehearsed performance of pained duty. "Mum," Jason began, placing his hand over mine. "We've done it. We've filed the petition for guardianship with the county court." "It is just a formality. Eleanor," Madison added quickly, her voice smooth as silk. "It's a necessary procedure. We've included Dr. Nolan's full medical report and the behavioral logs. This is just to protect you, so we can legally manage your care and your finances without any trouble." This was the moment. I had to sell it. I let my face crumple. I pulled my hand away and covered my face, forcing a dry, ragged sob. A petition to a court. "Jason, have I really gotten that bad?" I looked up, widening my eyes, letting the tears I'd manufactured well up. I did not want this. "We know. Mom. We know," Jason said, his voice full of false sympathy. I let out a long, shuddering sigh. If you and Madison think this is what's best, if Dr. Nolan agrees, then I'll do whatever you say. I'm just so tired of being confused." The relief that washed over their faces was visible. Jason relaxed, his shoulders dropping. Madison's tight smile softened. They had won. Their difficult, confused old mother had finally surrendered. Their overconfidence was now my greatest asset. The next day, I met with Veronica and Douglas, the lawyer. Douglas was a man in his late 60s, sharp as a tack, with zero patience for fools. "They filed," I reported. "Good," Douglas said, tapping a pen on his legal pad. "And the hearing is set for next Wednesday. They're trying to fast-track it. They will fail." He looked at Dr. Nolan's report, which Veronica had obtained a copy of. "Ah, Dr. Nolan. I know him well. I had his expert testimony thrown out in the Alvarez case 2 years ago. The man's methodology is based entirely on who is paying his invoice." Veronica looked at me. "Douglas has a plan. It is aggressive." "What is it?" I asked. "We are not going to defend," Douglas said, his eyes locking on mine. "We are not going to argue that you are a little forgetful. We are going to use their petition as the stage for a counter-offensive. We will subpoena Dr. Nolan. We will have Ms. Mills testify on behalf of Blue Harbor Capital. And we will have the state's financial crimes inspector in the gallery, ready to provide testimony if the judge allows." Veronica then looked at me, a question in her eyes. "Eleanor, you've followed this perfectly, but just so I know, you were a teacher. Correct? This legal financial maneuvering, are you comfortable with it?" I smiled, a real, thin smile. "Veronica," I said. "Jason always remembered me as the mom who graded papers and baked cookies. He forgot that for the last 20 years of my career. I was not just a history teacher. I was the elected union representative for the entire district. I led 3 contract negotiations against the school board. I handled 2 lawsuits regarding pension benefits. I've read more bad faith contracts than Jason has had hot dinners. He thinks I'm a confused old woman who can't read. He forgot I'm the one who taught him how. Douglas actually laughed. A short, sharp bark. Well, he said, that just makes this even better. Following his advice, I made one more move. I went to a notary public and signed a legally binding document, dated 4 days before Jason's petition was filed. It was a durable financial power of attorney, but a springing one. It appointed Veronica Mills as my sole financial advocate, effective only in the event that I was ever medically declared incompetent. It was a legal firewall. If they won, they would still lose. They would be guardians of an empty box, with Veronica holding the key. In the final days before the hearing, Madison became insufferable. She had already won. She began cleaning out my room in earnest, throwing away a small stack of my books and an old, comfortable cardigan, claiming they were mildewed. I watched her do it. She even had the lock on my bedroom door changed. For your own safety, Eleanor, so you do not wander at night. She spoke openly of her plans. This room will make such a perfect home office. The light is fantastic, she said to Jason, right in front of me. The night before the hearing, I stood in my room. The lock on the door felt cold and final. In the middle of the floor, I had intentionally placed my carved wooden jewelry box. It was empty. The few pieces I had salvaged from the trash were safe with Douglas, logged as evidence. The rest, the pieces she had stolen and pawned, I would get those back, or their value. I looked at the empty box. How much had they thrown away? How much was I about to take back? I walked to the mirror. I had laid out a simple, severe black dress. I looked at my reflection, at the 63-year-old woman they had tried to erase. If they win tomorrow, I whispered to my reflection, my life is over. But if I win, I am not just saving myself. My eyes were not the eyes of a victim. They were the eyes of a woman who had just finished preparing for battle. Jason and Madison sat in the front row, the perfect picture of filial piety. He wore a dark, conservative suit. She wore a pale grey dress, her hands clasped demurely in her lap. When Jason was called to testify, his voice was thick with rehearsed emotion. He spoke of my rapid decline after David's death, my bouts of confusion, the time I got lost on the bus. We're so scared she's going to hurt herself. Your Honor, he said, wiping a tear from his eye. We just want to protect her. Madison followed. She presented her evidence on the courtroom's large monitor. It was the greatest hits of my supposed incompetence, the video clips she had so carefully curated. There I was, leaving the milk on the counter. There I was, asking her what day it was. Twice. She just gets so agitated, Madison narrated softly, her voice full of pity. We're worried. She doesn't lock the door. She forgets the stove. It's just not safe. Then came Dr. Nolan, their star witness. He confidently presented his professional assessment, the report he had signed before I had even finished my evaluation. He cited the family's extensive behavioral logs, my anxiety during the examination, and my inability to recall simple facts. He concluded gravely, in my medical opinion, Mrs. Hayes is suffering from a progressive cognitive decline. She is no longer capable of managing her daily life or, crucially, her complex financial affairs. I strongly recommend the court approve this petition for full guardianship. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, looked at me with an expression of weary sympathy. Mrs. Hayes, she said, do you have a response to these claims? I looked up, blinking slowly, as if emerging from a fog. Your Honor? Sometimes I do get so very confused. I let my voice tremble just enough. I could see Jason and Madison exchange the briefest look of triumph. This was going exactly as they had planned. If I may, Your Honor. Douglas, my lawyer, said, rising to his feet. One moment, Mr. Douglas. Your client is speaking. I stammered, then stopped, as if I'd lost my train of thought. Douglas stepped forward. My client is, in fact, confused, Your Honor. But not about her own mind. She is confused as to why her son and daughter-in-law are committing financial fraud against her. Jason's lawyer leaped to his feet. Objection, relevance. It is the only relevance, Douglas countered smoothly. The petitioners claim they must manage Mrs. Hayes's complex finances. We intend to prove they are, in fact, actively attempting to steal those finances. Before my client testifies further, I must present supplementary evidence regarding the petitioner's immediate financial context. I call Ms. Veronica Mills to the stand. The judge frowned, but nodded. I'll allow it, but make it brief. Veronica was the picture of corporate authority. In a calm, factual tone, she testified that Jason Hayes was under internal investigation at Blue Harbor Capital for using company resources and proprietary data to falsify financial profiles. Specifically, Veronica said, his mother's, he has been emailing high-risk lenders from his work account, preparing to leverage Mrs. Hayes's assets for a personal loan. She provided the printouts of the emails, including the one where Jason bragged to a colleague about taking control of my assets. The judge's frown deepened. I next call Inspector Miles of the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation, Douglas said. The inspector was brief. He detailed the existence of a shell corporation. JH Capital Solutions, registered to Jason. We discovered an empty holding account, the inspector said. Opened last week, intended to receive a wire transfer of over $500,000 from a lender named Apex Bridge Loans. The loan was fraudulently secured against Mrs. Hayes's portfolio. Assets Mr. Hayes does not legally control. Jason was ashen. Madison was staring at him, her mask of concern replaced by a look of pure, dawning horror. And now, Your Honor? Douglas continued. The petitioners submitted video evidence of my client's confusion. We would like to play the full, unedited clips from which those segments were taken. The monitor lit up. This time, it showed the true context. There was Madison, her voice a low snarl, saying, God, Eleanor, can you just sit down? It showed her threatening me before the dinner party. If you are not going to sign, we will have to talk to the court. The audio was sharp and clear. The final clip showed Madison shoving a pill bottle at me. Dr. Nolan said you need this. Just take it. Douglas then recalled Dr. Nolan. The doctor was sweating. Dr. Nolan, Douglas asked, holding up the report. Is it standard practice to write and sign a final diagnosis before completing all patient examinations? That it was a preliminary draft, Nolan stammered. A draft you signed. And why did your report rely almost exclusively on the narrative provided by Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, the very parties who stand to gain hundreds of thousands of dollars from this diagnosis? Are you aware of the Alvarez case, Doctor? Where this exact court deemed your testimony compromised and unreliable. Nolan's face went crimson. He had no answer. The judge looked at me, her eyes now sharp and assessing, all pity gone. She picked up the thick loan agreement from Apex, the one Jason had tried to force me to sign, which Douglas had submitted as evidence. Mrs. Hayes, she said, this is a complex financial document. Page 4, Section 3. Can you please read that paragraph aloud and then explain to me, in simple terms, what it means? I stood. I took the document. My hand was steady. My voice, when I spoke, was not the voice of a confused old woman. It was the voice of a union representative who had negotiated contracts for 30 years. I read the dense, convoluted paragraph regarding default, acceleration clauses, and the seizure of collateral. I then set the paper down and looked directly at the judge. In simple terms, Your Honor, I said, my voice ringing out in the silent room. It means if the borrower misses a single payment, the lender can immediately seize all listed assets in this case, my entire portfolio and the proceeds from my home. It also allows them to demand the full, outstanding balance, plus penalties, instantly. It is not just a loan, it is a predatory trap, designed to ensure the borrower defaults and loses everything. I finished. I looked over at my son. Jason was staring at me, his mouth open, his eyes wide with the sickening, complete realization that the person he had been trying to rob was standing right in front of him. His narrative, his entire case, had just imploded. There was a full, heavy second of silence in the courtroom. Jason's face was a mask of disbelief. Madison looked like she was going to be physically ill. The judge removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. In my 12 years on this bench, she said, her voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room, I have rarely seen such a cynical, predatory, and frankly, poorly executed attempt to defraud a family member under the guise of care. She looked directly at Jason and Madison. The petition for guardianship is not only denied, it is dismissed with extreme prejudice. This court finds that the respondent, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, is in full possession of her cognitive faculties and is more than capable of managing her own affairs. Madison let out a small, strangled sound. Furthermore, the judge continued, based on the testimony of Inspector Miles. She nodded to the inspector, who promptly stood. Your Honor, the inspector said, in light of the evidence presented, the state's attorney's office will be opening a formal criminal investigation into Jason Hayes for felony financial fraud and conspiracy, and into both Jason and Madison Hayes for financial elder abuse. Jason shot to his feet. What? No. I was trying to protect her. I was trying to manage things. Objection overruled. Sit down, his own lawyer hissed, pulling him back into his chair. We are not finished, Douglas said, his voice cutting through Jason's protests. We have one final item. The petitioners claimed Mrs. Hayes was misremembering lost jewelry. We submit these 3 pawn receipts from the last 2 months for a pair of diamond studs and a gold wedding band, matching the description of the items Mrs. Hayes reported missing. They are pawned not under the name Hayes, Your Honor, but under the name of Jessica Riley, a college friend of Madison Hayes. He placed a second stack of papers down. And these, emails from Mrs. Hayes's daughter-in-law to a design partner, detailing her plans to flip her mother-in-law's dated house once the guardianship went through. She specifically mentions a budget for liquidating the antique junk and old jewelry that the old woman won't need anymore. This was never about care. It was a business plan. The judge's expression was thunderous. "This court," she stated, "does not have the jurisdiction to try these criminal matters today, but I am ordering that this entire transcript, including Dr. Nolan's highly questionable testimony, be sent immediately to the district attorney's office. This is no longer just a family matter. This is a matter of public interest." Jason had his head in his hands. Madison was staring blankly at the wall, her brand evaporating in real time. "Mrs. Hayes," the judge said, her voice softening for the first time. "Do you wish to say anything?" I stood. I did not look at the judge. I looked at my son. I let the silence stretch, forcing him to meet my gaze. "You are right, Jason," I said, my voice perfectly steady. No tremor, no tears. "I am confused about one thing. I am confused about which day was the real betrayal. Was it when you decided I was worth more to you as a bank account than as a mother? Or was it the day I came down to the kitchen and found my mother's pearls in the garbage?" I turned my gaze to Madison. "You said, 'I don't want your taste here.' You threw 3 generations of my family into a trash bag with old pizza. You did it to see if I was as weak as you hoped." I looked back at Jason. When I saw that, I grieved for my husband. I grieved for my mother. But I also grieved for you. Because on that morning, I buried the son I thought I had. The love I had for that version of you, it died right there on the driveway. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "I am not a vindictive woman," I continued, "but I am a practical one. You did not want my taste in your home, and you will not have my assets in your bank account." I turned to the judge. "Your Honor, in light of my son's actions, I have, of course, updated my estate plan. I have here a fully executed and notarized copy of the Hayes Education Trust, signed last week. As of that date, my son, Jason Hayes, has been fully and irrevocably disinherited. My entire remaining estate, the money he was trying to steal, is now legally designated for the education of my grandchildren and a scholarship fund. He will not see one more dollar." Douglas handed the document to the clerk. Jason let out a choked, desperate sound. He slumped forward in his chair as if his spine had been removed. Madison, finally understanding the totality of her loss, grabbed his arm, her nails digging in, her face a mask of pale fury. I saw a man in the back row with a press badge, furiously taking notes. The judge banged her gavel. "This court is adjourned." I did not look back. I picked up my purse and walked, not shuffling, but striding, down the center aisle. The doors opened, and a small cluster of local reporters, alerted by the inspector, rushed forward. Cameras flashed. "Mrs. Hayes, what happened in there? Did your son try to steal from you?" I paused on the top step of the courthouse, the sunlight hitting my face. I looked at the cameras, and then past them, to the life that was now my own. "Just remember one thing," I said, my voice clear and carrying. "Never underestimate an old woman just because she is quiet." I walked down the steps, leaving Jason and Madison behind me, emerging from the courtroom doors to face the consequences they had built. The fallout was immediate. 3 days after the hearing, I received a call from the CEO of Blue Harbor Capital. I was invited to their downtown headquarters, not as a victim, but as a guest. The CEO and 2 board members met me in a large conference room. They offered a formal, profound apology for Jason's actions. He has been suspended indefinitely, pending the outcome of the criminal investigation, the CEO said. His behavior is a gross violation of our ethics. They offered me lifetime access to their top financial advisors, free of charge, as a gesture of goodwill. Veronica met me afterward. I should tell you, she said, stirring her coffee. Jason was on our radar for a while. We suspected financial irregularities, but we could not pin it down. When you agreed to cooperate, you gave us the legal and ethical grounds to do a deep dive. You did not just save yourself. Eleanor, you helped us clean our house. She smiled. Thank you for not staying silent. I did not stay in that White House another night. The day after the hearing, while they were presumably meeting with criminal lawyers, I had a moving company pack my few belongings. I leased a small, simple apartment in a quiet building near a park, using the funds I had already secured. I left the guest room exactly as I had found it, a sterile, empty white box. When I closed the front door of their house for the last time, I did not look back. I left no trace. Jason found me. He showed up at my new apartment complex, looking haggard. The arrogant sales manager was gone. In his place was a desperate, panicked man. Mum, please, he begged in the lobby. You have to talk to them. You have to tell the DA it was a misunderstanding. He was weeping. I was under so much pressure. The debts that Texas thing Madison pushed me. She kept saying we needed the money, that you would not even notice. I listened to him, feeling nothing. The grief I had felt on the driveway was gone, replaced by a cold, hard finality. I am not the one who did this, Jason, I said, my voice quiet. You put me in a corner. You tried to turn me into a legal signature, an incapacitated person. I simply did the opposite. I became a person. He asked if I would ask the DA for leniency. No, I said. I will be cooperating fully with the district attorney's office. I will answer every question they have, truthfully. Madison tried a different approach. She took to social media, her brand. She posted a tearful video, mascara running, about the nightmare of a toxic, manipulative mother-in-law who was trying to destroy her family. But the narrative would not stick. The court testimony was public record. Someone leaked the unedited footage from my hidden cameras. The comments section turned on her instantly. Her partnerships vanished overnight. The brands that had sponsored her minimalist white life did not want to be associated with elder abuse. Her career as an interior queen was over. A week later, I drove to my old neighborhood. I met a few of my former neighbors, the ones I used to garden with, for coffee. I told them the truth. Not the version Jason and Madison had been spreading, but the real story. I was met with shocked silence, then with firm hand grasps and warm hugs. That simple, quiet support from my community was the anchor I had been missing, a stark contrast to the absolute isolation I had felt in my son's home. The most difficult day was the last. I went to the district attorney's office to sign my final, official statement. It was a thick document, detailing every threat, every falsified paper, every stolen item. As I stepped out of the office into the long, quiet hallway of the courthouse, I saw him. Jason was sitting on a bench at the far end, waiting for his own meeting with his criminal defense lawyer. He looked up. Our eyes met across the polished floor. It felt like a mile stretched between us. He looked broken. I just held his gaze. Then, I gave him one, single, small nod. It was not forgiveness. It was goodbye. A final farewell to the son I had raised, who had ceased to be that person many years ago. That evening, I sat in my new apartment. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light across the room. I took out the carved wooden box and opened the lid. It was empty, just polished wood and velvet lining. I closed it and put it away. Then, I went to my bedroom, unlocked a small, fireproof safe, and took out a heavy velvet roll. I unrolled it on the table. There they were, my grandmother's wedding band, the diamond studs David gave me on our 30th anniversary, my mother's pearls. They were pristine. I had sent the real heirlooms to a bank vault the day after David's funeral. The pieces Madison had contemptuously thrown into the trash, the ones she had pawned, were just very good copies I had made years ago for travel. I picked up the heavy gold locket, the sunlight catching the engraving. I smiled, a small, quiet, determined smile. The only thing they ever managed to steal, I thought, was the illusion that I knew nothing. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. I'd really love to know where you all are listening from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts so we can all connect. If this story resonated with you, I hope you'll subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary and give this video a like. And please, if you can, support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people who need it.